bone spurs in my neck that were causing me like a lot of pain. And those came from sports injuries when I was younger.
Oh, wow.
I was really involved in the martial arts when I was younger, and these bone spurs were just really creating a lot of problems for me. So, ironically, my wife's a pharmacist, and she said, "Look, whatever you do, don't get the traditional surgery where they cut the back of your neck open. They take the spurs out, and then they fuse your discs, and you're in pain the rest of your life." So there still is. There's a very famous Korean doctor in Pittsburgh, actually, that goes in through the front of the neck. It's called a foraminal anatomy. And he goes in, he makes a small incision on your neck, and he moves your esophagus aside. Of course, you're asleep.
Mm-hmm.
And he drills out these bone spurs. So it's a relatively easy surgery, and I was only in the hospital there in Pittsburgh for one night, and then my wife and I drove back to North Carolina. Well, what happened then, Tim, is that, and of course my heart transplant team knows what happened now, but about 3 nights later in my bed, about 11:30 at night, I had a massive heart attack.
Oh, wow.
And I threw a blood clot, which was unexpected, and it went right into my widowmaker. And my wife didn't even know I was having a heart attack. All it was, you're confused. It's 11:30 at night. She hears all this screaming, and she thought it was my daughter. My daughter Maria, my only child, is a severely handicapped child, and she has a seizure disorder. And she thought it was Maria. She ran down the hall to check on Maria, and she found that it wasn't her. She comes back into our bedroom, turns on a light in there, and flopping around like a fish. So she called the ambulance, and I passed out from the pain. And we're only about 3 miles from the hospital here, thank goodness. So the ambulance driver comes in. I'm passed out. They rush me to the hospital. He knows I'm having a massive heart attack, calls it in. And we get into the hospital. I'm on the gurney. They rush me into a room. And they gave me, I guess, whatever it was that they give you, blood thinners, things like that. And they got me stable. So the nurse said, "Look, we called the cardiologist. He's not in the hospital. He's on his way in, but Rob is stable. Everything is going to be okay." Well, as soon as she said that, my wife was there and the nurse was there. My wife said it was kind of like out of the movie The Exorcist. All of a sudden, if you can imagine, I'm laying flat on the gurney, I'm unconscious, and all of a sudden I spring forward from my waist up. It was almost like somebody grabbed my shirt and just pulled me forward with great force. And I sat straight up and I screamed out the name Frosty. And when I screamed out the name Frosty, I fell backwards on the gurney and I flatlined.
Oh, my.
I rang out in the hospital, and in rushed the team of doctors that tried to resuscitate me. And I say tried because they took my wife Melanie out of the room and they began to work on me, and they could not bring me back. They tried the sternal rubs, they tried the paddles, they tried physical CPR. They put 3 to 4 injections directly into my heart, like epinephrine, to try to start me. I was dead for 20 minutes.
Oh, wow.
And that's in my medical records. So there's a doctor there, a little Indian woman by the name of Dr. Patel, who's a very good friend of mine now. For some reason, that woman refused to give up. And she kept on working on me until she got a slight pulse. In that moment, the cardiologist came in. They did an emergency catheterization up through my thigh, and he found the blockage, which was in my widowmaker. He put 2 stents in my heart. And unfortunately, it was too late. I went into cardiogenic shock. And they had to put me on the vent. I was intubated, and I went into 4 days. So that's what you call a bad day.
Wow. Wow.
That's how it started.
Well, I had a heart catheterization before my heart surgery. Man, that things are painful. And they put you on this metal bed. They lie you sideways, and they go up through your. Well, actually, I don't forget how I think they went up my finger or something when they did it. Oh my gosh, the pain. Oh,
Yeah, they went through your wrist probably.
my wrist. Yeah, my wrist. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was in a 4-day coma, and they didn't think I was going to live. So actually, they called my oldest brother, who still lives in Pittsburgh, and he came down, drove through the night, and he called the local parish priest, and the priest came in and anointed me with oil and gave me my last rites. And then throughout the next 4 days, they had neurologists come in to see if I was brain dead. And I don't know how they test for that, but on the 4th day, my doctor said, look, we got to pull the vent out because he's probably a vegetable. When we pull the vent out, we'll see what we got.
Oh,
So
wow.
obviously, I started to choke. And there I was. So what's curious about this, Tim, is that this was my first near-death experience. I had 2.
Wow.
The first one, when I came out of my coma, the first person to come in the room was my wife, Melanie. And she said I was talking like a little child, and I had a high-pitched voice, talking real fast. And I said, Melanie, you got to believe me. You got to believe me. I said, it was your brother Frosty. He came to me. And she said, oh, my God. It makes sense now. I said, what are you talking about? She said, right before you flatlined, you came up on the gurney, scared the hell out of everybody, and then you collapsed. And she said, tell me exactly what Frosty said to you. And he said to me, I've made a big mess out of things, and you have to go back and help clean things up. But tell my parents I'm in a good place.
Oh, wow.
So what happened, Tim, is that 7 weeks before the night I died, my brother-in-law, Frosty, had unfortunately committed suicide. And he was living at the time in his parents' house in the upstairs bedroom. And they live about 30 miles from here. And about 5:30 in the morning, when he took his life, his mother called me and asked me if I could come down to the house and go up into his room and see if he left a journal or a note or something, to give them a clue as to why he might have done that.
Hmm.
So 7 times I went up into that bedroom, and it was a very, very gory scene. And finally, on the 7th time, I did find a journal. I gave it to the family. And that was the first thing that happened. But what was even more curious, and by the way, that changed that was the first near-death experience and the first paradigm shift in my belief system.
Mm-hmm.
Because being raised Catholic, I was always taught as a Catholic growing up, and I know they've changed, which bothers me too. The rules back then were, if you committed suicide, that was a mortal sin, you went straight down.
Right.
And I'm thinking to myself, I'm laying there on the gurney, and I'm thinking, or in my recovery room, I'm thinking, but Frosty told me, speaking to me just as clear as I'm speaking to you, that he was in a good place.
Mm.
So how can that be?
Right.
So, the next thing that happened, the second day, here comes this doctor, little Indian woman in a white coat, and she pulls a chair up, sits down beside me. And I had, my arms were paralyzed the first couple of days coming back home. And she sits down and she puts her hand on mine and she introduces herself and tells me who she is. I'm Dr. Patel, I'm the one that worked on you that night. And she starts to cry and she starts to tell me about, how many times she almost lost me. She didn't think that I was going to make it, and so on and so forth. And then all of a sudden, it got very personal. And she began to tell me about her father, which I thought was very odd. And she said, you know, Rob, my father and I were so close. We can almost read each other's thoughts. He helped me through medical school, and all he was living for was to see my first child. And she said, I was pregnant with my first son, and 6 months before he was born, my father suddenly died of an aneurysm. And she said, you know, I'm a Hindu, and it was very spiritual, but I've become bitter. I've lost my faith, and I don't hear from my father anymore. We used to have a very strong spiritual connection, but she said, you know, seeing you here alive gives me hope that maybe, just maybe, there's something more out there.
Yep.
And, you know, Tim, when she was telling me this, it was like I had this epiphany, the puzzle unscrambled. Something had been bothering me because another male spirit had entered the room in that 20 minutes when I was dead.
Mm-hmm.
And it kept on repeating the same thing over and over and over again. Don't give up. You can save him. Keep working on him. Don't give up. You can save him. And it hit me that it was her father speaking to her through me, because she should have called it like 15 minutes ago, okay?
Right.
But she kept working on me. And I didn't tell her in that moment because I knew that she would have thought that I was crazy. So I let it go. But you know what? After I got back from Chicago, because that's where I got my heart, I went to see her. I brought a dozen roses. I went to see her at the hospital. We sat down in the cafeteria, and I told her about her dad. And it was an amazing meeting, because now every birthday, we talk every year on his birthday, and she feels her father now. She hears her father speak, and you know, it was just proof that her father really never left her. He's always been with her. And
Right.
it just changed her whole life.
Mm-hmm.
To know that.
It does change your life when you have near death experiences. I've had 2 aneurysms. I've had open heart surgery. I had two heart valves replaced. I had a stroke. I now have a stoma, and my mom changes my ostomy bag every 3 or 4 days, and I have a implanted defibrillator in now. It does change your life, that's for sure.
Well, it certainly does, and it, you know, it brings you closer to spirit.
Sure does.
It brings you closer to spirit. So I'll tell you what happened, and I talk about this in the book in the chapter "Seeking a New Heart." So before they released me from the hospital, guys, they told me, "Hey, you're not going to survive very long without a heart transplant.
Mm-hmm.
Your heart's completely destroyed." So what they did was they fitted me in this defibrillator vest. You know what that is?
I've had one. Yeah, I had one for 9 months. Yeah, it sucks too.
That is, right?
Yeah, I've had one. Yep.
So, you know, this thing, my heart was so weak, of course. This thing would shock me back to life. Talk about PTSD. Every couple of steps. And then they also, like I was so bad off, so I had this bulletproof vest on, what I called, and had this battery pack, you know,
Yep.
talking about
Zoll. Yep.
on my right shoulder.
Mm-hmm.
And then they put a port in my chest that was dripping milrinone on my heart every 60 seconds.
Oh,
So
wow.
another battery pack on my left shoulder, and every 60 seconds you could hear this pump, you know, dripping this medicine on my heart. And my doctor said, "Hey, this medicine is like STP. It makes the heart pump, but it starts to clot,
Mm-hmm.
and it's going to wear the heart out very, very fast. So you need to get a heart transplant as soon as possible."
Right.
Well, what happened was that I couldn't get a heart here in North Carolina, and the hearts were in short supply. I went to Duke, I went to Sanger, I went everywhere. I couldn't get a heart. So I was about to resign from my company. My company, steel company, is based in Chicago. And I called my boss to resign, and he said, "Well, let me talk to the owner of the company." I didn't know the owner of the company sat on the medical board of the University of Chicago Medicine, because heart disease ran in his family. And he helped me get admitted to the University of Chicago Medicine.
Wow.
So 2 days later, my wife and I were on a plane, and I walked into the University of Chicago Medicine. And when Dr. Uriel, which by the way, Uriel's an archangel,
Mhm.
when Dr. Uriel saw me, he said, "Rob, I don't need to,
Wow.
but he said, we're gonna help you." And it was there that I made medical history, Tim, because they had been working on a heart pump called the New Pulse for about 15 years. And they sat me down and they said, "Hey, Rob, we've been working on this New Pulse. It's the only thing we got that's going to keep you alive until a donor heart comes, because we don't know when a donor heart is going to come. It could be 3 months, it could be 4 months, we don't know." So I said, "Okay, what is this thing?" And they said, "Well, we're going to put a small incision in your upper left chest, and we're going to fish this balloon pump down through your aorta, and we're going to drill a hole in the left side of your body. Under your rib cage, there's going to be a titanium disc, and the wires are going to come out of that disc, and they're going to attach to this pump, which is run by an iPad, and it'll pump your heart." And shape it so your heart erupts. It should keep you alive. I said, "Oh, that's great, Doc." I said, "How many people have had this thing?" And he said, "Well, that's just it. We've only tested this thing on cows." To take it to the FDA to get approved for clinical trials.
Really?
And he said, you really don't have a choice. So I got this thing in me, and this New Pulse, my wife nicknamed it Thumper because it was so loud, and every time it would beat my heart,
Mhm.
it rocked my body. The nurses would come in and say, "How in the heck do you sleep?" And I said, "I don't."
Jeez.
But I got to tell you guys, so I died in January 26th, and I was transplanted on June 6th, same year, so it's 6 months. But what I'm going to get into now is my second and most profound near-death experience that changed my life.
Cool.
So I'm in Chicago, got this New Pulse thing pumping my heart, keeping me alive. I weigh about 74 pounds. I had dropped down to about 132. I was a skeleton. And they also found prostate cancer in me, which they said eliminated me from getting heart. Because in theory, if you've got cancer in your body, I'm on immune suppressants for the rest of my life. But in theory, they say that the cancer will flourish, and they're not going to waste the heart. So when they found that, and it was right at the end there, it was sometime in May, I wrote a letter that said, "Look, I got a special needs child. You guys are going to have to find a way to transplant me. I have to live."
Mm.
So they said, if we find one other person in the country that was transplanted with prostate cancer, we can get approval from the government. But you have to sign these papers that says we're going to take the prostate out right after you get your heart. I said, "Fine, I'll sign whatever you got."
Right.
So, but before that happened, I wasn't sure I was going to get a heart. And there I was on the 8th floor of the University of Chicago Medicine. And it was, I was alone. It was about, I don't know, 1 o'clock in the morning, something like that. And all of a sudden, this really wicked storm whips up off of Lake Michigan. And up on the 8th floor, it's like you're in the clouds. And this storm started just smashing against my windows. I'd never seen shoots of rain like that, lightning. And all of a sudden, guys, I started to get weaker and weaker and weaker. And it was almost like there was a dark entity in the room reminding me every mistake I ever made in my life, and I was just getting weaker and drawing all this negative energy to myself. I was like a magnet. And before you know it, my heart went into tachycardia, and there I was. So it's hard to explain. I call this, in my book, this chapter is entitled Into the Ethereal. Because what happened next, it's almost like in the next moment. And I can't really say how much time passed. But I was taken up into a timeless place. I found myself inside this shapeless, formless vacuum of sorts, this unending, infinite vastness. It was like I was everywhere at once. It was like, it was like I was made of sand and someone picked me up and threw the grains of my being into a strong wind, scattering me across this infinite, timeless universe. It's the best way that I can describe it. I'm standing there in the middle of nowhere, and I could see my broken, atrophied body laying in the bed, about to die, and I could see myself standing in the middle of nowhere with the same green hospital gown on, but I was whole.
Wow.
And what was happening was unexplainable. But immediately, it felt as if I was connected to the vast wisdom of the universe, all of the time. And I remember, being raised a Christian. I remember standing there being very disappointed because I did not see Jesus Christ.
Wow.
I did not see a single divine being.
I didn't either when I had mine.
Angel.
Yeah.
Yeah, you didn't either.
No.
Right? My parents didn't come to me that have gone before. Nobody was waiting for me. It was me standing in the middle of them.
Yep.
But what happened was very, very, very interesting because in that place, even though there was no language, no music, I knew that communication was kind of telepathic. It was sensed, felt, and absorbed. In other words, it was almost like extrasensory perception and synchronicity at the same time. If I wanted to know the answer to any question, all I had to do was think about it, and it came. And standing there in the middle of nowhere, it was like God was expressed to me as an imprint of concepts that I wholly understood in that moment. And let me explain. These concepts were being absorbed by my spirit, and I could, in that unspoken language of the ethereal, I could hear them and I could feel them. And all of a sudden, I heard, I am the power behind all things. My power is omnipotent. I am the origin of all. This is the divine source. This is your real identity. And I knew that I was in the presence of the divine, of God's love and light. And none of my pain followed me into that place.
Until you woke up.
It was just me standing in the middle of nowhere. And what was curious, Tim, is that the body's five senses had no functionality in that place. So I couldn't taste anything, smell anything, or touch anything. But what I was able to do was expand my ability to view light. And the human eye can only detect a small percentage of the color spectrum. But there, in this ethereal place that I call it, these unseen colors just abounded. It's hard to describe that.
Yeah.
I also knew that time was only real in this physical realm to satisfy our one-dimensional thinking. But there, time was constantly in flux between past and present, creating the ultimate paradox. And I remember that the future seemed hidden, and if it was there, I had no sense of it, nor did I worry about the future. It's very interesting.
Yeah, there's no concept of time. There's no concept of time there at all. And I remember when I had my heart surgery, I was in surgery for must have been 9 hours. I went in at like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and I woke up in recovery at 2 a.m., 2:30 a.m., and I'm like, "Where's my mom and sister at?" They're like, "They went home. It's 2:30 in the morning." I'm like, "Oh my gosh." It didn't even seem that long. It seemed like 5 minutes. There's no time there. It seemed like I was there and woke up in within a couple minutes.
Yeah, yeah, that's exactly right. Um, and you know, here's what was fascinating to me. There were so many things that happened there, but I realized that the longer I was there, with each insight that was revealed, I thought to myself, huh, how simple. You know, everything is created from the same ingredient, same formula. All people, all creatures, everything animate, inanimate, we're all connected.
Hmm.
We just manifest physical forms differently.
Correct.
All things are one.
Hmm.
It's it's the only way the creator could have designed it. Only humans have made it so complicated. I understood that I was not my body, my race, or my religion. It was a message of unity.
Yes.
I understood that God experiences and expresses through creation,
Hmm.
like us. And the title of my book, Quarks of Life. What happened next? And this is on my cover. And, I had a guy was actually from Italy design this cover, his own 3D technology, and it was the best depiction of what I saw that I could describe. But the most fascinating part of this experience was I saw and simultaneously became part of what looked like this gigantic web that covered the earth and stretched into infinity. And I can't explain exactly what the web is, except that it looked like it was made of trillions and trillions of neurons in a vast interconnected network that binds us all. I somehow knew that each neuron had a little tiny quark or spark of light inside its nucleus. We remember what neurons look like from science class. They have this nucleus, and then they have the dendrites and tentacles, and each neuron is entwined with the next. And it wove this tapestry of twinkling lights that hung on the ceiling of the universe. And it was in that moment that I knew that quarks are the smallest building blocks of matter.
Hmm.
And everything is made of light, including us.
Wow.
So there I realized that God uses light to create, heal, and transform us. These quarks combine to create infinite possibilities in the universe. They can become a person, a tree, a plant, a dog. It doesn't matter. Everything is made of light. And that's why I entitled my book Quarks of Light.
That's awesome.
And Tim, when I was there, connected to everything, I was part of that web. And I realized in that place that if I hurt myself, I hurt everything connected to me. But if I love, the light would spread. And I didn't feel afraid or lonely in that place because I knew I was connected to everything.
Yeah.
And that is how we should look at life here in that temporal world.
Mhm.
Loneliness is just an illusion. How can we be alone?
Exactly.
And we're part of everything.
We're all connected together, aren't we?
We are. We're all connected. Look, how do three guys from Pittsburgh end up talking?
Yeah.
Near-death experiences.
That's what I told. Yeah, that's what I told Damon the other day. How is it that that you were my physical therapist, and now we met, and then now you're co-hosting my show together with me? It's that's how does that work? Only God could connect us together.
That's it. Because we have to understand this concept that everything is connected. We're all one. And there is this is why I don't understand all the problems that we have in the world, because if everybody began to understand this, there's a universal conversation taking place that all of creation can understand.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what it is? It's love. Because I realized in that place that God is love and light. And since we're all made of light, it makes sense that we should find a way to get along with one another. Because let me tell you, I've come to understand it took me 3 years to write my book. And during that time of researching things, and meditating, and writing, I realized that that web that I saw is really just a reflection of the light and dark struggles that all of humanity has dealt with since the beginning of time. What we do here reflects what's going on in the spirit and vice versa. So I came to understand that those dark parts of the web that I saw were places where people weren't loving enough. They weren't expressing and becoming everything that they were created to be.
Mm-hmm.
That's what, so many times in life, I've seen my brother-in-law Frosty, my donor heart, which I'll get into, people that are drugged into the darkness by the vicissitudes of life, all the challenges, whether it's drug abuse, alcohol abuse, family abuse, whatever it is that drags people into the darkness, that's what dims the light.
Mm-hmm.
And it's about, guys, it's about how much we love. And the best way to do that is by serving others. The more we serve, the brighter our life becomes. And it lights up the path for others. And that's what that web is all about.
Yeah, exactly. Damon, you have a question for Rob?
Yeah, I'm taking us all in, Rob. Quite a fascinating story. Many thoughts went through my head as you're describing this thing so eloquently. I'm curious, multiple questions, but I'd like to just start off with a quick summary. So you're in your mid-50s. You're having some cardiac issues. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was 56 when he died. Yep.
Yeah. You're. I presume you were raised Catholic.
Yes.
Some of these things. I mean, the concepts that pop into my head as a summary of what you're describing are essentially what I would describe as Eastern concepts, which that's kind of where my bias comes from because of my pre-graduate work at Duquesne, in the sense of the ideas of interdependence, interconnectivity, impermanence, the idea of co-origination, co-arising. You described a matrix-like, net-like structuring of realities, so to speak, the concept of light and all these things. I guess my question to you is, were you a reader, and if so, what type of literature had you read prior to all these experiences? If you were a reader, in fact, did you have any? What were your biases going into these two near-death experiences from a conceptual standpoint, other than your Catholic spiritual upbringing? Was there anything else that might have informed, like the way you wrote your book and all this stuff? I just find it fascinatingly parallel to the way the East interprets things from a spiritual perspective. I find it ironic that you actually had a Hindu physician, as well. And I'm wondering how much of that colored your description of all this.
Now, interesting. Great question. A great question. And so let me just tell you a little bit about my upbringing. Having been raised Catholic, I had a very myopic view of the world. And, I was raised very much with that mentality that, hey, listen, there's a hell, you better behave. After all, you can go to confession and make yourself right, And I really never, I never forget my mother taking me, because I was always very inquisitive. And my mother took me to the priest one time and said, "Look, my son is asking so many questions about God, and maybe you can help him out." And I'll never forget the day. I was probably 11 years old when my mother took me to see Father O'Connell. And we sat down, and I started asking him these questions. And he was really taken aback by it. He was like, where is he getting this stuff? And then he said something to me, which I hope nobody ever says to a young person again. He said, "Son, never read the Bible, because all you're going to do is get even more confused, because you have to go to seminary like me. You have to be educated to understand the Bible. So you're taking concepts that are getting very confused in your mind, and don't do that anymore. You just come to church and listen to what I have to say."
Jeez.
So, you know, at that moment, I mean, he was telling me, don't be a free thinker. Don't question anything that the church has to say. And I didn't challenge him actually in that moment. I actually went on for years and years and years and years, and even into adulthood, just following my Catholic faith. But I was turned off by so many things in the church. And as I got older and left home and got out in the world and saw some of the incongruencies in the church and the abuse and some of the things that really got my back up, I continued to be a person of faith, but only as an insurance policy.
Mm-hmm.
I was never really a true believer. It was more like, hey, I better believe it, that if I do die, I want to make sure that I but I never really gave it a whole lot of thought until that night that I died. And I remember coming out of coma and laying there after those experiences, and I was just awestruck by Frosty coming to me, the voice that was telling Dr. Patel not to give up on me. And by the way, I had Dr. Bajwa, who was the cardiologist that came in and put the 2 stents in my heart, as a Sikh. And he was also one of the first ones that I saw coming out of coma. He was shaking me awake and saying, "How are you feeling?" And he had a purple headdress on. And, what Sikhs look like. And I remember thinking to myself, "Wow, this is a great movie, and this guy's playing a guru. He's doing a really good job." And so I've had, Dr. Patel, who's the one that didn't give up on me, Dr. Bajwa, who's a cardiologist, he's a good friend of mine too, and then Dr. Carson was the guy that intubated me, who's a Christian.
Mm-hmm.
And I interviewed all 3 of them for my book. When I got to the University of Chicago Medicine, Dr. Uriel is a Polish Jew, and Dr. Jivanandan is an Indian man who follows a holy man in India by the name of Sai Baba, who he believes is God. And so I have to tell you, I had this very colorful array of all these world religions. I had nurses that were Muslims, Christians, people from all over the world. And I wrote a chapter entitled All One. Because what I was fascinated with when I was in Chicago, I had to stay in Chicago by myself. I lived there in an apartment for a year, because when you get a heart transplant, the hospital is responsible for you. If you die in the first year, they can lose their transplant license, and of course that's where they make their money. So part of going to Chicago was agreeing that I had to stay there for a year, because the testing is just insane. You have to go almost every other day and get biopsy from the heart to make sure it's not rejected. So this is where I began to do my research, and I began to research all of these world religions and challenge my own belief systems. And I am still a Christian, but I found this common thread woven throughout all world religions. And in their
very good, yeah.
They all have that same thread, which is love. every one of them.
Yep.
And it's, and it just supported my view and my experience of this whole concept that the divine is just irreproachable light and the love and light of God. And like I say, I remain a Christian, but I'm also open to other people's views and respect their views as long as they are in the right place and they don't harm anyone. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. But it's, so circling back on your original question, no, it wasn't like I studied, the Hindu religion or any of these other religions before I had my near-death experience. But I was always curious as a child, asking my priest, probably way too many questions. I'm sure I annoyed the heck out of all of them. But I seem to have this sense early on, my mother used to say, of wanting to know more about where we came from.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, Rob, yeah, it did. It absolutely did. I was just curious to see how much material per se you were biased with in terms of going into that original NDE. Now, you mentioned during the first NDE, you were in 100 hours or so of a coma of some sort. How conscious were you within that period? Because you mentioned, obviously, you felt this presence when that Hindu female physician was presiding over you. Like, how were you flitting in and out? Were you aware of the external surroundings when you were in this the coma state, or
no,
like,
God, no.
Okay, you were not. Okay, so
no,
this is the way.
Yeah, I was, when I passed out in our bed, and I didn't wake up until I was coming out of coma, and Dr. Bagwell was shaking me, asking me how I was doing, and Melanie came into the room. And, my wife said, Rob, you had a massive heart attack. You've been in a coma. I mean, I didn't know anything. Yeah.
Okay. I'm listening. Go ahead, Rob.
No. So yeah, no. I wasn't aware of anything, and from the time that I passed out in my bed, I don't remember the ambulance drive. My next door neighbor,
Rob.
my wife called our next door neighbor to watch Maria. Thank God she didn't get up. But and like I said, when I woke up and I was in recovery, they waited a couple of days, and then all of my family from Pittsburgh was coming in. They had been there the whole time. They stayed in hotels, but I didn't know any of this.
Rob, when
Yeah.
how did that change your perception of the afterlife or dying? How did that change your perception? Are you afraid to die now, or are you at peace with it?
Well, I don't want to sound morbid, guys, but I got to tell you something. Not only am I not afraid to die, but I realized that I was sent back to get my daughter Maria safely to the other side. But here's how I'm going to answer that question. Because the last part of my experience, after I came out of that web and I realized if I hurt myself, I hurt everything connected to me, all of that, I had a profound experience watching the nurses who were caring for me. I watched those nurses coming in and out of, the rooms on my floor caring for people. And what happened was I had only seen the nurses that I had made negative assumptions about. I'm ashamed to say that, because I remember standing there in the middle of nowhere looking down, watching these nurses coming in and out of patients' rooms, and thought to myself, well, I thought I evolved past judgment, but obviously I hadn't, because there I was making all of these negative assumptions about these people. And what happened was I began to see their lives. It was almost like I was watching multiple television screens at once. like watching a trailer to a movie. I began to see their lives being rebuilt into that. In other words, their lives were going back,
Hmm.
and it was going backwards at high speed, almost like a cartoon artist draws a cartoon character. You know, they draw every movement and they flip the pages at high speed, give you the feeling. And this thing was going backwards, and every time there was a watershed event in their life, like big mistakes, bad personal choices, abuse, a car accident, something out of their control, that movie stopped just for a millisecond to give me, that's actually painting a portrait of who that person had become and why.
Hmm.
And I remember saying to myself, how could I have ever judged those people so much? And then I was given a life review of my own mistakes, all the things that I was ashamed of. And I don't mind telling you guys, there have been, through this journey with Maria, this 26-year journey with my daughter, having Rett syndrome, which is a horrifying disease that has crippled her for life. There have been many times in my life that I prayed to God to take her. And that's a heavy, heavy, heavy burden to carry around. And one of the most beautiful experiences that I had is that when I forgave myself, I saw Maria.
Wow.
Maria came to me. She came to me out of that web. And there she was, standing there, perfect and whole. And she was staring at me, and her eyes were filled with light. And I'm not talking about the kind of light that we see in the natural world, but that spirit of light that animates all light. And she was standing there. She had this knowing smile on her face. I recognized that smile immediately. Little spark that she had many times in her darkest moments. I immediately recognized.
Mom, what are you doing?
There's been times when we lived in the hospital for months. They could get seizures stopped. They could put her in phenobarbital coma. And every time she would have that smile on her face. And I realized in that moment, seeing her there, that she's been trying to tell me this whole time that you couldn't touch the best part of me, because the best part of me is in spirit. And in spirit, I'm perfect.
Hmm.
And I communicated to her in that unspoken language of sincerity. Said to her, Maria, please speak. I've never heard your voice. How I long to know your thoughts, your personality. I just want to hear you say one time, I love you, Dad. And I said to her, we don't know, your mother and I don't know what to do for you anymore. We've taken you everywhere, trying to cure. I don't know how to comfort you anymore when you're having seizures. Tell me what it is. And Maria answered me in that silent voice. She spoke 3 words that transformed my life. She said, just love me. When she said, just love me, it was the first time in my life that I felt free, forgiven. And I spoke into that vastness, and I heard my own voice echo back to me that said, I never want to leave this place.
Wow.
When I said I never want to leave this place, I found myself back in my bed. And that was the end of my experience. And I remember laying there in that hospital bed. That storm was raging outside. And that heart pump was, pumping, trying to keep me alive. And I was laying there, and I said, I really don't care if I don't her garage now. I just want to be back there with her. I want to be back there connected to everything in that place of love and light. I want to see my daughter whole. I could care less about the future. But it was placed on my spirit that I had to come back, write this story, share it, and take care of Maria, get her safely to the other side. So that was a long way of answering your question. I'm not afraid to die. The only thing that I do fear now is leaving before I get Maria safely to the other side.
Hmm.
But I went through, living in Chicago by myself alone in that apartment. My wife couldn't come up much because she has to care for Maria. But I went through a very deep depression there because I could not grapple with what was happening here in the temporal world and the physical. this period of like 4 or 5 months, I'd get up every morning. Of course, I was having to deal with pain in my body, trying to recover. But I would meditate and try to get back up into that ethereal place, climb the ladder, metaphorically speaking. And I come crashing down every day. And I realized that I can't get back to that place. There's no getting back to that place.
Right.
And I had to learn how to define, how to find the divine in everyday living, in other people, nature, life. But I still struggle with it sometimes. But I know now it helps me deal with my daughter's suffering, and it helps me deal with life in a way that I didn't have the tools to deal with before.
Well, I have, with my near-death experiences, I know I'm not afraid to go. And the last time I had a near-death experiences was when I had my defibrillator put in, and my cousin, I have a cousin that died of cancer, and while I was on the other side, Billy had appeared to me, and he had a big smile on his face, and he says, "I'm home now. I'm happy." And I told Dr. Cherry and that the guy, the doctor that put my defibrillator in. I said, "Have you ever heard of near death experiences? Has your patients ever said anything about an experience that they've had?" And he says, "No, nobody's ever told me any stories like that." Because he stopped my heart for like 30 seconds to test my defibrillator, and at that point, I saw my cousin.
That does not surprise me at all.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't surprise me. Here's what I tell people when they challenge me on these things and we talk about this stuff. Why is it so hard to believe when we are spiritual beings and the human spirit? It's all we are.
Exactly.
And it's kind of like, okay, yeah. I mean, I've heard of some near-death experiences. I've seen some stuff out there on Facebook or what have you. It's really hard to swallow. And I think some of it is the things that are very authentic near-death experiences that people have. I spoke last year at the International Association of Near-Death Studies, and told my story. And I met an incredible woman, everyone was spoken and easy. She was an officer in the Navy for 20 years. And she's got a lot of pictures of her with George Bush, served under him, and her stepdaughter was in the Army, and she was struck by lightning and killed instantly. And while she was in the Navy, she began to get messages for something. And she realized that she had to get a mediumship. So she retired from the Navy, and now she travels around. Her husband was also in the Navy. He was a wife too. And they travel around and they do readings and they do workshops on mediumship, and she's a podcast and medium podcast. And she's got what they call credible evidence of these conversations and these spiritual encounters. She wrote a beautiful book titled Brooks Message that proves that one particular one that she had with a couple who had lost their son, and all of the clues and things that began to unfold after their death and how he was finding ways to communicate with them. So when I run across people like Suzanne and others, I have a lot of credibility. It's those experiences that really strengthen my faith, because everybody goes through this period sometimes. And what saved me was when Maria got sick at 18 months, I began to tremble because I knew it was going to be. knew it was going to be a nice one. And what helped me right before, even though it took me 2 years, when I was 14 to not to care about is that I have and my wife taught me to take it through, and I would tremble when I was going through all of this 6 months training to get started and so on and so forth. And that really saved me in terms of helping to make the book, because all I did was return to my journals. Because the memory was failing.
Can you give me some water?
Writing things that
Mom,
and even my audio journals.
give me a bottle of water.
Has all dictated and put down on paper, so I could refer to those things and use them for my book. So if you guys ever get a chance to read my book, Forks of Life Experience, you'll see that I talk about that in
I actually got a copy of it. I just ordered a copy of it just now, a few minutes ago. So I'll read it.
Oh, that's great. That's great. I hope you get something out of it too. So I won't spoil everything for your audience, but the donor part that was living inside me also transitioned to a suicide. So
Oh, wow.
I have, yeah. And we don't have time to get into it tonight. But there's also just an incredible story of so-called coincidences with this person, how it ended up in my chest. I coined the phrase in my book that coincidences in God's way remain anonymous. And it certainly is the case in my doing the book.
How old was the person that the heart came from?
20 years old.
Oh, wow.
Born 3 months before my daughter Maria.
Wow, that's incredible.
And I will share this with you, Tim. It's a female who always wanted to work with special needs children. And there's tons of other so-called coincidences on this young woman that lives inside me. Her name is Molly. So I'll save that for the book.
Wow. Have you got any thoughts or anything, any way of thinking or thoughts from this person's heart? Or any intuition or anything?
All the time.
Really?
All the time. I get into that in depth in my book. I research that a lot because, let's put it this way, after transplant, actually started when I came out of recovery and this heart was beating so strong in my chest that I asked the doctor, this guy was a very interesting character, I call him a character, they call him Dr. O at the hospital because he's the guy that goes out in the middle of the night, the mysterious guy that brings the hearts. And when I came out of surgery and started to wake up, that heart was beating so strong that I was holding onto the bed where I felt like I was getting pushed out of my bed. And I said, Dr. O, what did you put inside me? It's like this thing is consuming my entire being. And he had such a dry, straight face. He just looked at me and he said, oh, we put a Jaguar heart in this kid. He waits and he walked out of the room. And I remember my nurses, they cracked up because I asked for my cell phone and there I was, so naive. I'm Googling if it was possible to put a Jaguar in a human being.
Wow.
Because the heart was so strong. So Tim, to answer your question, through my research, and now I'm building a keynote address around this, and I actually want to build courses on it. But briefly, I'll do it in some now sketch because I know we're out of time. The heart communicates with the brain a lot more than the brain communicates with the heart. And let me explain. And science didn't know this for many years, but now they've identified that the heart has its own brain, and that's what makes heart transplantation work. So the heart of course, it's the first thing that develops in the mother's womb. So that relationship develops early on. It's the heart that develops first, not the brain. The heart is what pumps the blood, oxygen, and nutrients to the brain. So this relationship develops early on. A lot of our memories are stored in there, preferences, emotions, feelings. And the heart communicates with the brain in 4 ways. I'll go real quick. It communicates neurologically. It communicates biochemically through hormones. It communicates through what's called pulse waves, which is a fancy way of saying your sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system. And then my favorite, which communicates via an energetic magnetic field. And this is where our intuition comes from. This energetic field that the heart generates is 60 to 100 times stronger than the brain. And they now have devices that can measure this that actually goes out more than 100 feet in radius from the body. So when someone, for example, walks into a room and you say, oh, I feel that person's energy is terrible or it's good or whatever.
Yeah.
And it's also the way we communicate with animals. It's where our intuition comes from. These thoughts and feelings that are being generated through this electromagnetic field are coming from the heart. So we need to begin to think about the heart.
What are you doing? I keep having to mute my mic.
And the brain as a landmark. So when I got transplanted, I
keep having to mute my mic.
Transplantation, I began to get strong feelings.
I keep having to mute my mic for the background.
And I went to my transplant doctor and I said, is this normal? I have no idea.
Please mute my mic when I'm not talking.
And he said, oh no. He said, listen, I could tell you stories that will curl your hair. He said, you know, my favorite one, he said, I had this big burly UPS driver, big guy, hands like baseball gloves. I transplanted him and he never got to know who his stone heart was. And after 2 years, he lived in Chicago. He had this brilliant career with UPS, 30-something years pension. He came to me one day and he said, I have to transfer all my records to Santa Fe, New Mexico, moving to Santa Fe. And my doctor said, what do you mean moving to Santa Fe? You're going to go up to career, what are you going to do? He said, yeah, I'm a chef.
Wow.
And he said, I have to be a chef. And my doctor looked up his records and lo and behold, his stone and heart was a master chef. So those stories, and many of them, I could tell you from the people that were transplanted on my floor that I've stayed in touch with. And you know, it's curious because it doesn't happen for everyone. And I don't know if it's because they're not open to it, or they just kind of don't believe it and they shut it off, or they try to repress their feelings, or exactly what it is. But, you know, this young woman, Molly, was one of the ones that prompted me to get out there and start talking about suicide prevention, get out there and start sharing the story. Many things that, you know, were driving me to write the book. So yeah, great question. But yes, it's all very real. Science is there now to substantiate it, and it's really curious. And I'm just glad that even though there were things in her life that drove her into darkness and caused her to take her own life, she was, from what her best friend, who I'm really close to now, who grew up with her since she was 5, she's actually come down here and spent time with us and spent time with Maria, cut her hair. She's what she does for a living. And, she helped me a lot with that portion of the book. And thank goodness she was a joyful person, even though she did suffer from, you know, depression and a lot of other things, some drug abuse. There were a lot of things involved in that. But I'm just happy that I got someone who I know their purpose was to end up in me. And I believe that she felt that way too. Because, like I say, some of the other so-called coincidences are just so bizarre. There's no other way to make sense of it.
That's so awesome. You guys ready to take a break?
Sure.
Okay. You're listening to Supernatural Realm on the VARA network. We'll be right back with more discussion with Mark Gentile right after this. Don't go away. One second. Okay. Once I get the archives up. Okay. We'll be right back right after this. Don't go away.
The last frequency.
Okay, good.
Yeah, that's
Hey, listen, I've got about, we've been on for like an hour, 15 minutes now. I've got about another 5 or 10 minutes to give you guys, and then I got to jump.
Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. I thought that was a great story with your donor. I actually had a patient that I rehabbed myself that was a Catholic priest. And became friends with him, and the stories that he shared with me were quite stunning in terms of just the proclivities and the leanings and things of that nature that he suddenly and spontaneously found himself, affected by. And there were a lot of strange parallels, just like you're describing with your donor. And for me, I don't know about you, but it's a very powerful, fundamental existential question that kind of really begs the question of identity and what you really are from a material perspective. Because the way that Catholic priest described it to me, he felt that he took on the essence of an entirely different person, and that somehow that heart, it sort of homogenized with his essence on some level, and there was something new created there. So it was a very strange, I don't know. I mean, you're living it. So to me, I mean, that's just a very powerful calling to really investigate what you really are.
And what are you doing?
Open your eyes, to say the least.
Well, yeah, no, absolutely. Well, I refer to it as, I talk about this in the book, but I refer to it as the me within the we.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The me within the we.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
It gets down to fundamental questions about soul. What's the soul per se? I don't know what you think about reincarnation. If you're a reincarnationist now, because that kind of covers the basis in terms of why we're going through all this, why people suffer, why some people do not, that sort of thing. Is this just a big classroom? Do we have to click and repeat? Are there lessons to be learned, and so on? Yeah, all good
Well,
stuff.
I'm still out on reincarnation. And I hope the hell I don't have to come back. Right. and if I chose this, I don't know what I did in prior life, but I do think that it is about learning.
Mhm.
I do believe that. I do believe it, and I think it's distilled down to one thing: learning how to love.
Right, you could boil that down. You could just say you're approximating God. It's your
Rob,
lesson to approximate God in some sense.
Rob, would you consider yourself an old soul? or you consider yourself still learning? What are your thoughts on that?
I'll take the second part.
Or would you consider yourself an old soul, or do you think you're still learning?
No, I think I'm still learning. Um, I've had people tell me, maybe you're an old soul. I've had people call me a light worker. I don't know what that is, but
A light worker, yeah,
I'm still learning.
yeah, a light worker is somebody that does healing, probably, I would say.
Yeah, probably so. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. But I'm definitely still. I
Mhm.
mean, I still got a lot to learn. I can tell you that.
How long do you have? How long do you have to be on here? How long were you able to be on the show?
I was just telling Damien, I got a, I thought, and I apologize if I got this wrong, but I thought it was a 1 hour show. So we've been on about an hour and 20 minutes.
Okay.
Um,
I mean, I could end the show in about 10 minutes if you want. I mean, we don't have to go 2 hours. So if you have to go in 10 minutes, that's fine.
okay, yeah, I appreciate that because we don't have a caregiver tonight. I told my wife that I would help with Maria.
Oh, okay.
So that'd be good if we can wrap it in 10. I
Sure.
don't know if you ever have people call in with questions or how do you guys?
Yeah, we could certainly take calls. We could certainly take calls. If anybody has any questions for Rob, we got about 10 minutes left. The number is 724-602-2826. It's 724-602-2826. And if you have any questions for Rob or for me, myself or Damon, feel free to call. Again, 724-602-2826. We got about 10 minutes left, so get your calls in if you have any questions. Damon, you have a quick question for Rob?
Well, I mean, how is Maria doing these days? How are things going, Rob? How's your daughter?
Thanks for asking. Rett syndrome is a very, very complex, let's call it disease state, whatever you want to call it. I mean, what happens it's so rare that there's only about 367,000 girls on Earth that have it. It mostly strikes girls. So what happens is that at about 18 months, something triggers the master gene in the brain called the MECP2 to stop expressing. And girls are kind of cursed because they have two MECP2 genes. The MECP2 gene is responsible for producing the protein that actually makes our synapses connect in the brain. So the normal gene, for some reason, shuts off, and the abnormal expresses, and the abnormal doesn't allow the proteins to build as quickly or at all like the master gene does. So she's not retarded. Her brain is being held in suspended animation. It's like wiring a house, and you run out of money, and only a couple of rooms have wires and electricity. If I could just use that analogy. So at 26, we hope, it comes with a really difficult seizure disorder to control. She acts like she's severely autistic. She doesn't have language. She can't use her hands. She wrings her hands constantly. She walks with Forrest Gump braces with assistance. She's diapered. So she's total care. But much like a stroke victim, she knows everything. She knows what's going on. She just can't get it out. And she's incredibly evolved spiritually. We have, particularly since my near-death experience, I mean, we had a beautiful relationship prior, but I can always tell what was going on through her mind and intuitions, and she would always communicate with her eyes. And that's gotten even better now. But there's a new drug coming out in June that's been approved by the FDA for Rett girls to help these synapses in the brain connect. Now, we're hopeful that this will give Maria a little more development in terms of maybe she'll be able to feed herself, some hand use, maybe a little more mobility, things like that. So that's my hope. But at 26, I don't have any delusion that she's going to wake up one day and start doing algebra. Trust me. But if we can get her, like I say, to a point where it's easier to move her around, she has more mobility, that certainly is going to be a great help.
Does she have any intuitive abilities, or do you think, because I know autistic kids and other children like her have a tendency of being intuitive?
Well, even though she can't express it, Tim, I think she has a great intuitive ability. I know she has incredible sense of humor, great personality.
Mm-hmm.
She loves water. She loves all music. There's certain things that really turn her on. And like I say, there are times when it's almost like I can have a conversation with her,
Mm-hmm.
just being near her and watching what she does, the way she looks at me, and she has her own way of communicating.
Yeah, kind of like an animal, like a cat or dog, the way they communicate with us.
Well, very much so. And this is where the heart comes in,
Mm-hmm.
and the electromagnetic field, or our intuition, and how we communicate with animals and dogs and other people without language.
Yeah,
Same thing.
yeah,
Very much so.
that's awesome. She seems like she feels like a very intelligent girl, young lady.
She is, yeah, she is. She's quite bright. And we have a communication device with her. She loves to turn the computer on. She goes crazy. So I know she's dying to get some of this out of her, to communicate more. So hoping this drug will help us with that.
I kind of feel it will.
Me too, because we kept her in such great shape. Most Rett syndrome girls are atrophied skeletons in a wheelchair with feeding tubes.
Mhm.
Not Maria. We've been able to keep her healthy, and she loves to eat healthy and make sure she's got good, clean food all the time. We've taken her to the best PTs, the best physical therapists, the best everything to keep her body healthy and strong. And it's paid off.
Hey.
And hopefully, this medicine will be the icing on the cake and get some good results.
Hey, Damon, there's a patient for you.
Rob, I just have one last question. I have one last question for you. Do you still have a spiritual practice, a religious practice? If so, what is that? And are you still pretty active with it?
Very much so. So it's been very, very difficult over the years. We tried a lot of different churches, taking Maria in there, and as you can imagine, given that this is your field too, physical therapy, getting Maria ready to go anywhere, like building a skyscraper without a crane, it's difficult. And plus, she has her own way of communicating, and it's certainly not appropriate and it's loud. And
Mhm.
so you can go into a cry room or do what you can do with her, but then you really don't get fed spiritually. You don't get anything out of it. So my wife and I have our own routine, and I am a big transcendental meditator, and I pray every morning. Actually, when I wrote the book, one of the reasons why it took me 3 years is because I would get up at 4:30, and I would get into a prayer routine where I would pray to the Holy Spirit to let the words come through me, but not from me. And there were days that I would sit there and nothing would come, so I wouldn't write it. And I continue that practice today, connecting directly with the Creator, connecting directly with God through prayer and meditation. And we do the same with Maria. We read to her every night. And it is just all the Bible that we read to her. But I feel much more connected to God now than I ever have in my life.
Aw.
And I need to go to an institution to get fed. I do have and he's actually from the Pittsburgh area, very close friend of mine. I call him the Red, and he is a central figure in my life and in the book. It's been kind of like my spiritual guide through this whole thing. My wife called him the night I died, and he got a word from the Lord that I was going to live because I had to fulfill my purpose. And he comes down here a lot. He used to come a lot more often and anoint my home, pray over Maria. So he continues to be, when I get stuck or I need some guidance, he continues to be someone that I call. And he himself, being a Franciscan priest, actually has moved away from the priesthood and has practiced his own kind of more of a direct relationship with the Lord. And he finds that at this stage of the game in his life, and he's 70, he feels more connected than ever.
Wow. Well, it's been, oh man, this is always the fastest show on radio. I swear. I get some great guests on here, and Rob, you're no exception. I mean, you're wonderful. I mean, it's been a blessing and an honor to talk to you this last hour and a half. It's been really great.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. And I'm happy to be here with you two guys, share my story, and that's what it's all about, you know. It strengthens our faith, and it's good to have all these questions. And you know, when you ask questions like this, both of you, it's you know, it forces me to bring those things out and consolidate my own ideas, and it's all good. I appreciate you both for being great hosts.
You're welcome. How can people get a hold of your book? How can people get a hold of you if you have any questions, or if they have any questions? I mean.
Sure. So they can go to my website and they can email me through my website. And that website is very simple. It's Rob A, as an apple, Rob A Gentile. So that's ROBAGENTILE.com. And they can find my book, Quirks of Light, a near-death experience, on Amazon. I also did the audio version, which I narrated myself. So you can get the book on Amazon, or any bookseller carries it. It became a #1 bestseller, kind of organically, which is incredible.
Awesome.
So I would rather them connect to me through the website, because I get so many emails that it's just easier that way.
Okay.
So there's a contact page on my website, and a lot of my podcasts are on that website. All of them.
Awesome. Damon, do you have any remarks or comments in closing?
I just want to say, Rob, thank you very much for your time. The interview I thought was great. Your message was great. Your story is absolutely commendable. And just want to extend to you that my thoughts and prayers will be with you, your daughter, your family. I just thought that was a remarkable story, and it takes a lot of courage to share something like that. They go up quite some time, and I'm sure that many people are being inspired by all that. So thank you so much.
You're quite welcome, and I'll take all those prayers you can send.
We all do. We all need them. I understand.
Absolutely. We'll pray for each other.
Well, Rob, it's been great talking to you, and maybe we can have you back on a show again sometime after I read your book. I'd love to have you back on here.
That'd be great. That's why you can ask more pointed questions.
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess we're going to end the show here, and I would like to thank all the listeners for tuning in. And Thursday we have Mark Ireland on the show. He's been in contact with his son from the other side that passed away, and he's going to talk about his story and his conversation with his son. That's Mark Ireland on Thursday's edition of Supernatural Realm, right here on the VARA network. I want to thank everybody for tuning in, and again, thank you, Rob, for joining us. And Damon, it's great to have you on here as co-host as well.
Thank you, gentlemen.
God bless, guys. Have a good night.
Okay, thank you so much. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Well, folks, you've been listening to Supernatural Realm right here on the VARA network. Good night, everybody. God bless, and we'll talk to you all Thursday. Good night.
What was that? I don't know, man.
Stand by, Carolinas. Carolina Radio, Columbia. Excellent here. Roll off station.
Do you want to chat during the show? Just in case you do, we have a solution for you. MeWe. The Last Frequency has a group chat on MeWe that you can access during shows. Just go to lastfrequency.com, click on the upcoming guest page, and click on the MeWe chat pic on the left-hand side. That's all there is to it. The Last Frequency. We cover everything.
Good evening, my loyal listeners and dwellers of the night. Doing this show can work up quite the appetite. So if you like what you're listening to here on this radio show, and this station for that matter, then how about buying me a dinner? Just go to the Buy Me Dinner tab at www.lastfrequency.com and send $1, $5, $10. It's up to you. And in return, I will continue to bring you the best guests with the best information every single show. And I'll tell you what else I'll do. If you have a favorite recipe, you send it to me, and I will put it up on the website. We're going to put up a recipe section for those who donate and want their name and the recipe up there. We'll do that. And we can share it with others, everyone can enjoy their meal while they listen to The Last Frequency. So help us while we help you, and all of us help others. The Last Frequency. We cover everything.
Aim frequencies of all walks of life. Keep up with all things TLF Radio by joining our mailing list. Go to the bottom of the homepage and fill in the form. You'll get everything from guest info and show info and other important station-related information. So sign up now.
You're listening to the VARA Network.
Frequencies around the world. Listen up. The shop is here, and you can order TLF radio swag right now and show your friends and neighbors you're awake by wearing one of our many shirts, including our Let's Go Brandon shirt. That one is a hot seller, so get yours while supplies last. We have coffee mugs, clocks, so never miss your favorite shows, books, mouse pads. Just go to thelastfrequency.com and click the shop link. That's thelastfrequency.com and get to shopping.
My friends, we live in a world that's slipping away into constant uncertainty and danger. Imagine if something unthinkable happens tomorrow. Within hours, global supply chains can break down and never start up again. We've learned that lesson the hard way. And that means the smart thing to do is prepare for the worst, even if the peanut butter hasn't hit the fan yet. You should store emergency food to get you through whatever happens next. And we highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's largest emergency preparedness company. Your shipment will arrive quickly in unmarked boxes to avoid being victim and survive the upcoming uncertainty. Click on the banner over on thelastfrequency.com and get yourself on your way to surviving whatever may come our way.
This is The Last Frequency.
You are the resistance.
This is author Edwin F. Becker. My success with 1-800-RENT-A-GHOST has been such that I have a whole new enterprise. It is for those that are out there thinking, man, I can't wait for that zombie apocalypse. Well, I have the answer for you. Dial 1-800-OWN-A-ZOMBIE. You'll be the center of attention wherever you go. What a surprise those Jehovah's Witnesses will get when they knock on your door. Are you the black sheep of the family? Just think of the terror you can bring to the next family gathering. I'll bet you never knew fat old Uncle Ned could jump tables and run so fast. Or take your zombie to the next high school reunion. Have you ever seen a zombie twerk or do the Harlem Shake? And then go after all those a-holes that made fun of you in high school. Laid off from your executive job? Take your special friend to the boardroom to help you say farewell to your boss. You will add a whole new meaning to budget cuts. Neighbors giving you a problem making noise? Introduce them to your new pal and stand back because all will be quiet very soon. You'll be waiting for the next a-hole to look at you and say, fight me, because anyone who gives you the finger really does give you the finger. Dial 1-800-OWN-A-ZOMBIE. Order now and get the new book, Sewing on Limbs Can Be Creative. Not responsible for infectious disease, death, mayhem, severed limbs, cannibalism, paranoia, loss of sanity, nor that god-awful stench. And one more thing, there will be no returns. Ha 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 ha.
Will you ever run to the local office again?
No.
So you know the thing. My need is such. I pretend too much. I'm lonely, but no one can tell.
So I want to take advantage.
I'm the great pretender. A man in a of my own.
I keep forgetting I'm
Play the game, but tomorrow we'll say you belong.
Lion Dog Face Pony Show.
On
I
the
keep
road.
forgetting I'm president.
You're listening to the VARA network.
My name's Joe Biden. The only way we put it behind us is if more Americans get vaccinated. We also know that as our economy has come roaring back, we've seen some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation, but that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and were expected to be temporary. I keep forgetting I'm president.
You're listening to the VARA network.
My name's Joe Biden. No man has the right to raise a hand to a woman, and so we have to just change the culture and keep punching at it and punching at it and punching at it. Just when I came to the United States Senate 120 years ago, I promise you, the president has a big stick. I mean, he has made clear that my name is Joe Biden. I keep forgetting I'm president. I keep forgetting I'm president.
Mommy, look at the pretty snow cloud in the sky.
Shut up! We got a moron here. Is that it?
Kind of makes you wonder, huh?
You're listening to the VARA network.
Does evil exist? And if so, can one detect and measure it?
I'm sorry, come again?
If you interrupt me again, it's not going to go well.
Oh, you're starting to piss me off.
You don't know what this was.
There's a lot more where that came from, too.
How many supervisors do you want me to speak to that can't help me? You're screwing my computer again. You'll be arrested. I got trouble right here waiting for you.
Did you ever take a dump and make you feel like you just slept for 12 hours?
You're listening to the VARA network.
Hey, frequencies everywhere. Let the world know how you feel. Slide into a brand new Let's Go Brandon t-shirt. The crowds in stadiums around the country have expressed their mutual feelings about the current administration, and now you can make a statement by wearing one of our Let's Go Brandon t-shirts. Go to www.lastfrequency.com, click on the shop tab, and let's go, Brandon.
Do you have a troll, or maybe a group of trolls acting like moles trying to dig up dirt and make you just look stupid? Well, if so, introducing Troll Spray, industrial spray, designed to remove unwanted trolls from message boards, threads, blogs, YouTube videos, and much, much more. So if you need a can of Troll Spray, please call 1-800-1234. That's 1-800-1234 before midnight tonight, and we'll double your order. That's 1-800-1234. All major credit cards are accepted. Call 1-800-1234 before midnight tonight. If you don't, it may all be gone.
You're listening to the VARA network. Hey, frequencies of all walks of life. Keep up with all things TLF radio by joining our mailing list. Go to the bottom of the homepage and fill in the form. You'll get everything from guest info and show info and other important station-related information. So sign up now. You're listening to the VARA Network.
My name's Joe Biden. But the only way we put it behind us is if more Americans get vaccinated. We also know that as our economy has come roaring back, we see some price increases. Some folks have raised worries that this could be a sign of persistent inflation, but that's not our view. Our experts believe, and the data shows, that most of the price increases we've seen were expected and were expected to be temporary. I keep forgetting the president.
You're listening to the VARA Network.
My name's Joe Biden.
All of this as more than half of Americans think President Biden will go down as one of the worst presidents in American history.
I keep forgetting the president.
How many people do you want me to speak to that can't help it?
Screw up my computer again. You'll be arrested.
I got trouble right here waiting for you.
Did you ever take a dump and make you feel like you just slept for 12 hours?
You're listening to the VARA Network.
Stand by, Carolinas.
Carolina Radio, Columbia.
Do you want to chat during the show? Just in case you do, we have a solution for you. MeWe. The Last Frequency has a group chat on MeWe that you can access during shows. Just go to lastfrequency.com, click on the upcoming guest page, and click on the MeWe chat pig on the left-hand side. That's all there is to it. The Last Frequency. We cover everything.
Good evening, my loyal listeners and dwellers of the night. Doing this show can work up quite the appetite. So if you like what you're listening to here on this radio show, and this station for that matter, then how about buying me a dinner? Just go to the Buy Me Dinner tab at www.lastfrequency.com and send $1, $5, $10. It's up to you. And in return, I will continue to bring you the best guests with the best information every single show. And I'll tell you what else I'll do. If you have a favorite recipe, you send it to me. And I will put it up on the website. We're going to put up a recipe section for those who donate and want their name and the recipe up there. We'll do that. And we can share it with others. Everyone can enjoy their meal while they listen to The Last Frequency. So help us while we help you. All of us help others. The Last Frequency. We cover everything.
Hail frequencies of all walks of life. Keep up with all things TLF Radio by joining our mailing list. Go to the bottom of the homepage and fill in the form. You'll get everything from guest info and show info and other important station-related information. So sign up now.
You're listening to the VARA Network.
Frequencies around the world. Listen up. The shop is here, and you can order TLF Radio swag right now and show your friends and neighbors you're awake by wearing one of our many shirts, including our Let's Go Brandon shirt. That one is a hot seller, so get yours while supplies last. We have coffee mugs, vlogs, so never miss your favorite shows, books, mouse pads. Just go to thelastfrequency.com and click the shop link. That's thelastfrequency.com and get to shopping.
My friends, we live in a world that's slipping away into constant uncertainty and danger. Imagine if something unthinkable happens tomorrow. Within hours, global supply chains can break down and never start up again. We've learned that lesson the hard way. And that means the smart thing to do is prepare for the worst, even if the peanut butter hasn't hit the fan yet. You should store emergency food to get you through whatever happens next. And we highly recommend My Patriot Supply, America's largest emergency preparedness company. Your shipment will arrive quickly in unmarked boxes to avoid being victim and survive the upcoming uncertainty. Click on the banner over on thelastfrequency.com and get yourself on your way to surviving whatever may come our way.
This is the last frequency.